Hey, SUV owners, here's something no one tells you when you buy one. The first year feels perfect. The second year still feels solid. But somewhere around year 3, things start changing. Not in a way that breaks the car overnight, but in a way that slowly creeps in. A sound here, a feeling there. Something just doesn't feel as tight as it used to. And the problem is, most people ignore it. Because everything still works, right? The car runs, nothing major is wrong, so it gets pushed aside. That's exactly how small changes turn into expensive problems later. So in this video, we're going to break down what actually starts happening to SUVs after 3 years. The stuff owners notice but rarely talk about, and what you can do before it gets worse. Number 10. The interior starts wearing faster than you expected. You don't notice this right away, and that's exactly why it surprises people later. From the outside, your SUV still looks clean. Still looks like it should feel new. But once you sit inside, you start picking up on small changes. The seat you use every day doesn't feel as tight. The steering wheel grip isn't the same, and those little touch points begin to show signs of use sooner than you expected. And here's the thing. Nothing is technically wrong. The car still works perfectly fine, but the experience starts shifting. That fresh premium feeling you had in the first year slowly fades, and it's usually the interior that gives it away first. Once you notice it, it sticks in your mind every time you drive. What you can do here is simple but important. Take care of the interior early, not later. Clean it regularly, protect the materials, and don't wait until it looks worn out. Because once that wear settles in, bringing back that new feel is much harder than maintaining it in the first place. Number 9. The tech starts feeling slower and outdated. At first, the tech in your SUV feels sharp. The screen responds quickly, everything loads without delay, and it gives you that modern, high-end feel every time you use it. But after a couple of years, you start noticing small changes. The screen takes a second longer to respond, apps don't feel as smooth, and sometimes it just lags in a way that wasn't there before. It's not something that stops the car from working, but it changes the experience. You tap once, then again, waiting for it to catch up. And when you compare it to newer cars or even your phone, it starts to feel behind. That's when you realize the tech hasn't aged as well as the rest of the SUV. What you can do here is stay on top of updates whenever they're available and avoid overloading the system with unnecessary apps or data. It won't make it feel brand new again, but it can slow down that drop in performance and keep things usable for much longer. Number 8. Fuel economy begins to drop. Now, this is something most people don't notice right away because it doesn't change overnight. You're still driving the same way, same routes, nothing feels different behind the wheel. But if you actually pay attention, you start visiting the fuel station a little more often than you used to. It's a mix of things happening together. The engine isn't as fresh as it once was. Small deposits build up over time, and parts that used to run perfectly efficient start losing that edge. Even things like tire wear and driving conditions begin to play a bigger role. Nothing dramatic, just small changes stacking up quietly, and that's why it goes unnoticed for so long. It doesn't feel like a problem, it just feels like normal usage. But over months, it adds up, and you end up spending more without realizing why. What you can do here is keep an eye on your mileage, stay consistent with maintenance, and don't ignore small efficiency drops. Catching it early can save you more than you think. Number 7. The ride loses its tight feel. You don't usually notice this on a smooth road. It shows up on the same bumps you drive over every day, the ones you never paid attention to before. The SUV still feels stable, but there's a slight looseness now. A bit more movement, a softer response, something that just doesn't feel as controlled as it did in the beginning. That comes from parts doing their job for years. Shocks, bushings, joints. These aren't things that fail suddenly, they wear down slowly. And when they do, the change isn't loud or obvious, it's subtle, but once you feel it, you start realizing the ride isn't as solid as it used to be. Most people adjust to it without thinking, which is why it gets ignored. But that small change is your early signal. It's telling you the suspension isn't at its best anymore, and leaving it unchecked only makes the ride worse over time. What you can do is simple. Pay attention to how your SUV feels on familiar roads, and get the suspension checked before it turns into something bigger. Number 6. Rattles and small noises start appearing. At some point, you hear something that wasn't there before. Maybe it's a faint rattle from the door, a light vibration from the dashboard, or a small noise when you go over uneven roads. It's easy to brush it off at first, especially because everything else feels fine. But these sounds don't just appear randomly. They usually come from parts that have been holding steady for years and are now starting to loosen slightly. Interior panels shift, clips wear out, and even small gaps can start making noise once the car has gone through enough use. The tricky part is how inconsistent it feels. Some days you don't hear anything, and other days it's right there, noticeable enough to bother you. That's why most people delay dealing with it, thinking it's not serious. What you can do is catch these early. A quick check can stop a small noise from turning into something more annoying later, especially before it spreads to other areas. Number 5. Tires and brakes become a real expense. This is where ownership starts feeling a little different. Not because something breaks, but because things need replacing. Around this point, your SUV has already covered enough distance for wear items to catch up. Tires don't grip the same way anymore, and braking doesn't feel as sharp as it once did. You might not notice it during normal driving, but the difference shows up when you actually need it. Hard braking feels slightly longer, corners don't feel as planted, and that confident feel you had earlier starts fading. It's not dramatic, but it's enough to change how the car responds. Then comes the part most people underestimate: the cost. Tires for SUVs aren't cheap, and brake components add up quickly. What felt like a reliable, low-maintenance vehicle now starts asking for attention at the same time. What you can do here is plan ahead. Don't wait for performance to drop completely. Regular checks and timely replacements can keep both safety and cost under control. Number 4. Maintenance costs start creeping up. By this point, the SUV still feels familiar. You're used to it, comfortable with it, and it still does everything you expect. But this is where ownership starts shifting quietly. Service visits that used to feel routine now start coming with longer lists, and the bills don't look as light as they did in the beginning. It's not just one thing. Fluids need attention, filters stack up, alignment, balancing, and small components start adding up together. Even things like safety systems and sensors, which you rarely think about, can need calibration or checks once the vehicle has been through a few years of real-world driving. And because none of it feels urgent, it's easy to delay. You tell yourself it can wait, but that's where costs begin to build. Small services turn into bigger ones simply because they weren't handled at the right time. What you can do here is stay ahead of it. Follow the service schedule properly, don't skip the small stuff, and treat maintenance like protection, not an expense. It makes a bigger difference than most people realize. Number 3, the transmission starts acting different. This is one of those changes you don't notice right away, but once you feel it, you know something isn't the same. The shifts that used to feel smooth and almost invisible now have a slight delay, or a small jerk that wasn't there before. It still drives, still works, but the refinement you were used to starts slipping a bit. That usually comes from wear or building up over time. The transmission has been working constantly. Stop-and-go traffic, long drives, heat, load, and even though it's built to handle it, it doesn't stay in that perfect condition forever. Fluid quality changes, internal components wear down slightly, and that's when the behavior starts changing. The tricky part is how subtle it feels in the beginning. It's easy to ignore, easy to adjust your driving around it, and most people do exactly that. But that early difference is often the first signal that something needs attention. What you can do here is not wait for it to get worse. Keep up with transmission service, pay attention to how it shifts, and act early. Because once the problem becomes obvious, the cost doesn't stay small. Number 2, the engine loses its smoothness. You remember how it felt in the beginning. You'd start the SUV and the engine was almost silent. No vibration, no roughness, just a smooth, effortless feel like everything was working in perfect harmony. That's part of what makes a new SUV feel premium. Now fast forward a few years and something feels slightly different. Not bad, not broken, just not as clean as before. Maybe you notice a small vibration when you're stopped at a signal, or the engine sounds a bit more present than it used to be. It's subtle, but it's there. And here's the thing, this doesn't happen suddenly, it builds over time. The engine goes through thousands of heat cycles. Small deposits start forming inside, and parts that once worked perfectly together begin to lose that exact balance. You won't get a warning light for this, which is why most people don't think much of it at first. Some drivers just accept it and move on. Others keep noticing it every time they drive, because they remember how smooth it used to be. And that difference matters more than people think. What you can do is stay consistent with maintenance, use good fuel, and pay attention to how your engine feels. Because once that smoothness is gone completely, bringing it back isn't as easy as people expect. Number 1, the new car feel is completely gone. You never notice the exact moment it happens. There's no clear day where everything changes. It's more like a slow shift. One drive feels normal, the next feels slightly different, and then at some point you realize the SUV doesn't feel the way it used to. Not broken, not bad, just not the same. Think back to when it was new. You'd get in, start it up, and everything felt tight and controlled. The ride felt planted, the engine was smooth and quiet, and the whole cabin had that solid, well-built feel. You didn't have to think about anything, it just felt right every time you drove it. Now, a few years in, things start layering on top of each other. The suspension isn't as sharp, the engine doesn't feel as refined, the interior shows a bit of wear, and those small noises you once ignored start standing out more. None of it feels serious on its own, but together, they change how the car feels as a whole. And that's the part most people don't expect. The SUV hasn't suddenly gone bad, it's just moved past that early stage where everything feels perfect. This is the phase where you start seeing what long-term ownership really looks like. What you can do is stay ahead of it. Keep up with maintenance, don't ignore small changes, and treat the driving feel as something important, not something to overlook. Because once that overall feel drops too far, getting it back to that original state is much harder than people think. That's a wrap for today, guys, and if there's one thing to take from this, it's this: SUVs don't suddenly become bad after 3 years, they just start showing you their real side, the part no one talks about when you first buy them. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you felt any of these changes in your SUV, or is there something we didn't mention that you've experienced yourself? Drop it in the comments, because those real experiences help everyone watching make smarter decisions. Make sure you're subscribed because we've got a lot more coming. SUVs you should avoid, ones that are actually worth your money, and simple things that can save you from expensive surprises down the road. And if you want a video made specifically for your situation, your budget, your usage, your needs, just say it in the comments. We read them and we build videos around what you want to see next. Take care of your SUV and it'll take care of you. I'll see you in the next one.